through the strangest kind of changes.
Welcome back. My name is Kyla P. Barnes. I am your financial chef and coach. We are here with another version of our podcast, Conversations About the C Word. I do have with me a few guests who will hopefully help to enlighten the call as well as share their expertise. So I'm really looking forward to this. I think we'll have a good power pack call starting. My guest to introduce is Aikita with Soar Your Score. We have Dean on the call as well as Coleman. Can all of my guests hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Nice. So we have, in advance of this call, discovered a few topics that we'd like to cover with you, and we hope that they will provide some value to anyone out there. This call is going to be recorded in one take, one message, so that way we can get the information out there as naturally as possible, as if you were meeting us live or if we were sitting around a table just having a discussion. With that, our topics for this week are taxation, now or avoidance, advice to your 20-year-old self, assets versus liabilities, as well as the breakup, AI versus hours worked. We have, for the purpose of this call, decided to discuss advice to your 20-year-old self. So all my guests on the line, if you can come off mute, we're going to have a round discussion of things that we would like to have told our 20-year-old self if we could go back in time. I am going to start with my first guest, Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo, Catch a Tiger. Aikita, you go.
All right. Something that I would tell my 20-year-old self is that credit is important. To not overextend myself with credit cards by purchasing things that are unnecessary and don't hold value. I would also tell my younger self to make sure that I invest in my future. Don't look at just today. And I would tell my future self to look at home ownership early instead of paying rent. Those are the financial things that I would tell my 20-year-old self.
So I'm assuming that in your advice to your 20-year-old self, are these some of the hurdles that you struggled with or that you saw others struggle with? Like, how personal is this story to you?
Each of them are personal obstacles that I experienced.
Okay.
I didn't know growing up, no one taught me about credit. So when I got credit cards, I never knew that I needed to pay these people back. I was just swiping my card, looking really good and fly, and I didn't know how to pay them back. So in turn, it put me in debt, and I damaged my credit.
Anybody else on the call have any of those experiences?
I would say yes. Me too. Along with Rakita, Arkita, I'm sorry, don't get together. Look at that. I think back to my 20-year-old self. I will say that, yeah, I do totally agree with that. I would have tapped myself on the side and said, hey, you I know you like to go fly. I know you like Gucci. You like Louis Vuitton. You like all those things. It's fine. I like all those things.
Okay.
But just think about getting you a savings going.
Okay.
Getting you and I like my sister up there on here, my credit sister. That credit is so critical because sometimes you dig yourself so deep that you can't. It's hard to get yourself out of it. It can be done, but you definitely need to understand it.
Okay. What about you, Dean? Does her story or his story resonate with you?
Oh yeah, most certainly.
Okay.
Without a doubt. I mean, in college, around that age, they're handing out credit cards on every street corner.
Really, for
right?
sure.
And it's easy at first, right? To just spend money you don't really have.
Right.
No doubt about it. And to her point, I mean, the majority of those things that we spend our money on like that, they end up in the garbage. right?
Ooh, mic drop.
They're not. They have no real value.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, we may perceive them to have value right now when we get them because they look pretty, shiny, flashy, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But, eventually that thing goes in the trash and gets replaced by another one.
Gotcha.
And another one. And another one. It's a vicious cycle.
And another one, DJ Khaled. Okay, I'm sorry, this wasn't a paid advertisement. Just kidding. But I would say my story, or what I would say to my 20-year-old self, is that I would probably come in from a confidence angle because I've always been chubby. I have always been chubby. And I also have been a person who was raised like strictly Kojic. So I just didn't really have an identity when I went to school, and I tried to adopt different identities. So I would tell myself, just like Lizzo out there, like, love yourself, big, bad, bougie, beautiful, bald head, whatever it is, love yourself enough to where you don't discount opportunities or discount things that are coming your way because you just don't understand it. I would tell myself to be a bit more open to diversity, right? Because, coming out of the church at 18, 17, I was just kind of like, well, they're going to hell because, they've colored their hair and she has tattoos and piercings and everything. Like, oh my God, like, I just want to be part of the 144,000. But, that's not how the world works, right? You have to take everyone's religion is different. Everyone's views are different. So I would tell myself to just be open to that. And then also, no matter what you see, Kyla, Aikita, Young DJ, and Coleman out there at that time, if everybody else wants it, don't buy it, invest in it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Get that stock, find that ETF, maybe partner with your friend. If you guys got $50, put it together. Buy one thing and let that keep going. That's what I would tell my 20-year-old self. Anybody else have any comments on that? What are your thoughts?
I definitely agree with you because I grew up in the church as well. And you and I are kind of the opposite, but the same outcome. So if you said you grew up chubby, I grew up on the more petite side. So, it's always like that balance. So I didn't, really understand like certain things or, so it does open your eyes, growing up in the church versus, being outside of the church. So
For
that
sure.
is something that I would love my 20-year-old self to know that, we can serve the same person, but we can still have different outlooks, and it's okay.
Ooh, that's good. That's good. That's good. I gotta bring you back on, Aikita, to wrap up the calls because you said that too smoothly. Well, let's pivot to our next topic because we have time. Assets versus liabilities. I am going to start the first speaker up talking about this. Dean. Assets versus liabilities. What's your thoughts on that? I was going to say 2 cents, but actually you're worth a few more cents than that. So a whole dollar, Dean. You get a whole dollar.
Well, I often like the saying that people often have more dollars than they have cents.
Ooh, nice.
You know what I mean?
I like that one
So,
too.
At the end of the day, right? And I think it was a perfect segue because, I'm sorry, I forget her name.
Aikita. Mm-hmm.
Aikita.
Mm-hmm.
Aikita, I'm sorry. Not like the store, but close.
Mm.
That's what, yeah.
Okay,
So,
that's fair.
Everybody around us, I don't mean those closest to us necessarily, but like the government, corporations, social media in your face, it doesn't matter what it is, TV, they're all advertising, they're all taking a piece, they all want every penny you have. Right? And the more you spend, the less you have, the more they take.
Right.
Taxes, all these things are intertwined, right? But
right.
It's just a concept that I see repeat over and over and over again. One of the reasons that I left Schwab was because of the minimum balance that people had to have for me to be able to help them. And I felt like, the people I know don't have that much, They
True.
don't have 500 $100,000 to $1 million+ to invest, right?
True.
The people that need it the most, though, oftentimes they don't recognize that there's a need. They have no budgetary constraints. I see it time and time again. Quick story.
Okay.
My wife recently told me, now she works in a doctor's office. She is not a doctor. She is a therapist,
okay.
right? And one of her coworkers, who is 62 years old,
okay,
and has nothing saved, right?
Whoa.
I believe her mother just passed, and she inherited a home and a little bit, but
okay.
she's rented to this point, right?
Wow.
Yeah. She spends $24 a day on Starbucks.
Buying what?
$24 a day. Now, my wife told me this right before bed, and I was, like, my brain was on hyperdrive before bed thinking, man, okay, so is this 5 days a week or 7 days a week? And all these different thoughts, right?
Wow.
So I did the math both ways, and then I asked her in the morning. She said, I didn't ask that question specifically, but she did tell me that she had to pick up a part-time job to afford her habit, which tells me it's likely 7 days a week.
Wow.
Folks, that's almost $8,700 a year.
Yep.
Because of the stamp that's on the coffee cup.
Oh.
Right.
What about you, Aikita Coleman? Any comments on that? My goodness. The coffee ain't that great.
I used to be a culprit of Starbucks too. 7 days a week, not $24, but maybe $7. So I realized that I was literally drinking away in coffee or Starbucks $200 a month, and how much that added up for a year. And I was like, that's money that I can repurpose for, paying credit cards or putting in a savings account or investing and just doing other things. So sometimes we do have to get out of our own way. And again, I believe Kyla said, invest in those things. So that same money that she's spending, she can invest it into the Starbucks stock, and then she can see a return on the investment. So it's just helping the people that like you said, that we know that we can help. We have to help change their mindset and the trajectory of how they look at things so that they can elevate, because we're pouring into an economy that's not readily pouring back into us.
Gotcha. What about you, Coleman? Any comments there?
I totally agree. I'm still a Starbucks culprit. I'm not going to even lie.
He's still at the altar, y'all.
I'm still going to be honest. I do get Starbucks 3 times a week.
Ooh.
I will say that. We're not going to discuss the financial part of it. I'm going to say that. But I did recently have a conversation with my 7-year-old niece.
Okay.
And she questioned me about why did I cancel Netflix.
Ooh.
And I didn't cancel Netflix. One, I was paying for it, but I wasn't really utilizing it. And she wasn't really utilizing it because one time she did have a meltdown because she couldn't get on Netflix because she was on my account. But I told her, I said, when I buy a share of stock of Netflix, then I will turn on Netflix because at least I'm getting some return on my investment for Netflix because at least it's working for me. So, and I had to really, a 7-year-old, now the 7-year-olds now are very highly intelligent.
Yes.
Because they understand. And I had to break it down to her, but when she understood that, then she was like, okay, I get it. So she asked me, when are you buying that share of Netflix? I told her we're gonna revisit that later on.
I love it. So for me, assets versus liabilities is a way for a person who is tired of working, a person who would like to eventually work for themselves, or a person who doesn't want to work at all. It's a great segue into how you're able to get that. The assets of yesterday are not necessarily the assets of today, but if you have assets of yesterday, aka tangibles, artiques or artifacts or antiques was the word I was looking for, or even things that people are pricing to be assets at one point in time, like the NFTs that were that were created and now they're gone. Or, there's always watches. There are documents that as we get older and climate shifts and the atmosphere shifts, if you have some of those documents, they're actually worth millions of dollars. There are coins that are out there in circulations that are out there in circulation, that are worth like thousands and thousands of dollars. But assets by definition is anything of value, of economic value. So technically you only need to have a market, which is the same thing for entrepreneurship. You need to be able to sell one thing and another person buy it. So if you have something that's of value to someone else, you have a market, therefore it is an asset. Liabilities is something that in my family, when I was raised, that's all they did was negotiate and swap liabilities. They also sent very poor liability management down to their children and those people who would listen to them as guides. But when I went to college, I was able to see for my own self that many people work in a very low cost environment to where they can have more assets and less liabilities. It was only in the year 2015 I was able to realize for the first time in my life, after paying off all my debt, that I owed no one. That was the biggest check that I ever received because I owed no one. So it didn't matter if I needed to pay up something or pay down something or even squander the whole thing. I owed no one. And in addition to working towards paying down my debt, I was also raising my assets. I was raising my gift of time and tithe and offering. And so I was able to, in a very short amount of time, which doesn't quite make sense to the paper, do the right things for your assets while decreasing your liabilities and increasing your goodwill, put me where I am today. What are your thoughts on that?
I do agree. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. No, you hit a lot of really great things there, Kyla, as far as assets and liabilities and your perspectives. One thing that I want to piggyback on with that is, I think very often what gets missed is that the majority of the time assets should be appreciating, should be increasing in value.
Yes.
The majority of the time, people spend, let's just say it like it is, way too much on things that depreciate, that lose value, right? Mm-hmm. If it's not an investment that appreciates over time, it like we heard Coleman say, right? He's looking at buying share in Netflix before he's willing to turn that subscription back on. And it's that smart. It's that mindset, that concept of, at least in theory, the vast majority of shares are going to rise over time.
Mm-hmm. 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 What about you, Aikita, Coleman? What are your thoughts?
Definitely assets are, like you said, things that appreciate over time, such as home ownership. Mm-hmm. People, sometimes we get blinded by shiny things, such as new cars, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 for this grand car, and then as soon as you pull out the lot, it depreciates, or you find out how much a car depreciates if you happen to get in a car accident, and the value of the car is not actually valued at what you owe on it, and a lot of people have to learn that the hard way.
Wow, that's true. What about you, Coleman? You get the final say.
So I totally agree, and I had a conversation with my mom because my brother, when he was in college, she signed, and she's paying on a student loan. Now, me, I have a different mindset with my student loans. I don't know if y'all remember Sally Mae. I don't want to hear about a Sally Mae ever again, really. And I probably ain't even in business no more. But I paid them so aggressively because I got tired of the student loans. I got tired of having to give money back. So I paid them aggressively, and which in turn, I was on my part that I kept up with it, but I didn't keep up with it, and I was paying them every 2 weeks because I was able to do that. end up overpaying them, so they had to cut me some checks back.
Wow.
Because I overpaid them. I try to express that with my mom. Sometimes you just, if you want them off your back and you don't want them out of your purse or your pocket or your wallet, because you're not Capital One. You don't need to know what's in my pocket. My thing is this: I paid them aggressively so that I could have some more of that money, and I always kept a savings account. So I would take that money that they sent back to me and put it back in my savings. Now, like I tell people, even if you only got just $100 in your savings, that is yours. That is yours. You put that back for yourself. So don't feel ashamed. Don't worry about what everybody else has got in their pocket or in their wallet or their purse or their pocketbook. Just know that you're climbing a goal to get to where you need to be or where you want to be. So.
True. All right, Dean, any other final comments? Aikita, Coleman? Okay. Well, I certainly do appreciate everyone's time. Thank you so much for tuning in to our podcast. You can catch us here and there talking about topics that matter. My name is Kyla P. Barnes. I am your financial chef and coach with Jean Glaze Art and Finance. Check us out online at www.ginglas.com.